Welcome back. I was recently in a shop and they had a USMC. It's an Olean, New York K-bar in the brand new. I don't know exactly how old it was, but it was brand new in the box. Doesn't look like it ever been removed from the box. They had it for a price I couldn't refuse. I had some off-brand cheap K-bar looking knife when I was a kid, and I beat the holy crap out of it and destroyed it. And but I've never owned a real K-bar before, and I figured it was about the time. Even when I was in the military, I didn't have a knife this big. I carried a Finnish Puukko, and this was in an era of Rambo knives and lots of huge knives. I did have an M7 bayonet, but never a knife quite like this. The K-bar, an icon of World War II and later. I also had gotten revisited a Buck 110 that I had, a folding knife, and almost as soon as I picked up this K-bar, I decided I was going to get a Buck 119. The 119's a little bit smaller. The handle's smaller, more fitted handle than the K-bar, but Vietnam era, it was a contemporary of the K-bar. They were available at the same time as was the Buck 120, which is almost, well, the handle's smaller, but the blade itself, overall length is about the same between the K-bar and the Buck 120, although this has a much smaller handle. Now, I have really big hands, and the Buck handle on the 119 and the 120 is almost exactly identical, and I actually find it very comfortable. The K-bar handle is much larger, but it still has a nice feel to it. If I were to if I walked into the hardware store and was looking for a knife, they would probably, at any given time during the 70s, 80s, 60s, would probably have these three knives available. The drawback to the Buck is this handle does feel fairly slick, but holding it does feel fairly comfortable, and I wouldn't be worried about losing my grip on it. One thing I did do, since the Buck knives still aren't very expensive, I took my stippling equipment that I use for polymer framed pistols and I stippled this grip. The grip's already tiny, and I'm sure you could file serrations or do something to improve the grip a little bit, but I didn't want to do anything that would remove material, so I went ahead and stippled this. Since this is more like a lucite versus whatever plastic, let's say Glocks or similar polymer framed pistols are made of, this material doesn't flow when you heat it. Now, I did want to heat stipple it because I didn't want to remove material. I just wanted to move the material in order to give a better grip, and it does feel like it improves the grip, but again, the grip's not bad. Even though this is very slick, it still has a good feel to it, but I will very likely stipple this handle as well. Again, the USMC, this is some kind of a chromoly steel. It's a carbon steel with this coating on it. Coating's pretty durable and tough. Once you wear through that, if you keep it oiled, it'll be just fine. The Buck are 440 stainless steel, 440C, I do believe. And before all the myriad of wonder steels that are available today, this was absolutely just fine. It's still a good quality steel. About the only stainless steel I kind of snicker at is 420. But this 440 steel, 440C seems to be pretty good. Now, weight-wise, since these two knives are the exact same length from butt to tip, with a smaller handle here, so slightly larger blade here, the Buck 120 is somewhat lighter than the K-bar. You know what? I do have a scaler on here, so in the description, I'll go ahead and put the weights without sheaths into the description if anybody's interested. But yeah, the K-bar is definitely heavier. I think if I were to stick one of these on my Alice gear, I would probably go with the 119 over either of these other two. And then my second favorite, I would have to say, is probably this 120. Again, I really like the feel of this handle. Even though I have really large hands, this doesn't feel small, and it doesn't feel like I'm going to lose my grip on it. Going to the sheaths here, both of the Buck sheaths are very similar. They have a snap that reaches around. It's a little more secure than most sheaths, and you would pretty much have to intentionally snap that open. The belt loop on this is a little bit thinner than the one on the K-bar, but it's fully serviceable. Like I said, of the three, if I could only pick one, I would probably pick the 119, and then my next would be the 120, and then the venerable K-bar would be not a bad third choice. There is a much more robust and larger belt loop on this. They do make a modern Kydex sheath for this, and I'm considering getting one if I can find one cheap enough. The price of these knives, you can get one of the K-bar versions. They have a U.S. Army one. They have the USMC one, which this one is. And I do believe they may have one that doesn't really say Army or Marines. But the price is just over $100 on these, like $109, let's say, at the time of this. But again, I got this one in a shop. They had it used. This was used but new in the box, and I got it for such a ridiculously low price, I couldn't pass it up. The 119, I do believe I paid full price at $80 for it, and then the Buck 120 was $99. So $109, $99, and $79 for an excellent camping knife. Like I said, I'm not too big into huge fixed blades, and this is probably as huge as I'll ever get, but any one of these would be the belle of the ball. There's no wrong choice if you're looking to get any of these, but I just wanted to show a comparison between the venerable K-bar, awesome knife, and the Vietnam Contemporary Buck 119 and 120. Again, I have another video on my 112 and 110 folding automatic buck knives that I got, and I'll tell the story again of the customer service. I had an issue with one of the 112 autos that I had ordered. It had some defects to it, and I called Buck because the place I bought it from, I was seeing who would be faster to get a replacement if I returned it to Buck or to return it to the place I got it from. And the lady who answered she just picked up the phone at Buck, was immediately apologetic and professional and very sympathetic to the issues that I had with the knife. And I was just, especially in this day and age, that a company, the lady who picks up the phone was not rude or dismissive. It was just kind of a breath of fresh air, and just shows that there still are some good American companies. I haven't had to deal with K-Bar's customer service, but again, those are Olean, New York, and I forget where Buck's out of, but give them your hard-earned money. They deserve it. great companies that have been around for a very long time. Anyways, don't chop your toes off, and stay safe.